So greetings from Pennsylvania once again, and more specifically we are here in Adams County, Pennsylvania, kind of in south central Pennsylvania, and this is another episode in our French and Indian War series, and today we're going to talk about this woman right here, Mary Jemison. Yeah, so here's a closer look at her, because we'll talk about her quite a bit more here in this video, but they do have some information about her right here. Yeah, Mary Jemison, the white squaw stolen from Buchanan Valley by Indians. I think it says 1758 there. It was 1755 is when it actually happened, but it's erected in 1923. Because I got some information here. During the French and Indian War, Mary Jemison was kidnapped from this valley. It still says 1758 on here. April 5th, 1758, by a band of Frenchmen and Shawnee Indians, taken to Fort Duquesne, now Pittsburgh. She was adopted by Seneca Indians, who named her Degawanas in 1759. I think that actually means pretty girl. They moved to the Genesee River Valley in the state of New York. During her life with the Indians, Mary married and gave birth to 8 children. At the age of 91, she returned to her Christian faith and died a few days later on September 19th of 1833. Mary, called the White Woman of the Genesee, grew to love and respect her captors. She is buried at what later became Letchworth State Park in New York State. So once again, there's a look at her whole statue. There's another statue of her up in New York at Letchworth State Park. Alright, so now I'm just looking for a quieter spot to tell you her story in more detail. I should mention this is at St. Ignatius Loyola Catholic Church. I might put it down below there for you on the screen. That's where this is located. Here on Church Road, not too far from Biglerville, I think it's called. Alright, so we found a nice little place to sit. Up that way is the church, and the statue is just up that way as well. Right off the road. Church Road it's called. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk more about Mary Jemison. I do have some of my own notes down here, somewhere in there, and I also have this book here, Historic Tales of the Pennsylvania Wilds, Kathy Myers. So they have they have a whole story in here about her. So I'll be reading a little bit of this. It's some from her own perspective. So we will have story time in a little bit. I'll set the camera down and read to you a little bit. I'm not going to read a lot to you. I'll read some of the passages from this book concerning her. She was interviewed later in life by someone. She kind of told her own story. And of course, this is French and Indian War related. It's part of my series on the French and Indian War, you know, occurring in the 1750s. And with all things that are that old, there are differing accounts and differing dates for the story. Like that plaque mentioned 1758. But the book and other online sources said it was the spring of 1755, which makes more sense because that's when the raids started. By 1758, a lot of the Indian raids had quieted down in the area. And in fact, the Forbes expedition, which happened in 1758, was, you know, Fort Duquesne fell in 1758. So I'm not sure if that date up there is correct. I kind of lean more towards the date that's in this book and other sources. But, you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the story about Mary Jemison. But this won't be our first Indian captive story that we've told in this French and Indian War series. Because way back near the beginning, we talked about Barbara Liner and Marie Leroy, who were both captured during the Penn's Creek Massacre in spring of 1755. Talk about their capture and their eventual escape and how they made it back. And we talk about another one too. She's buried in I think there's some discrepancy as to who she was exactly, but anyway, she was returned in 1763 in what's called Pontiac's War, when most of the captives were returned, and she was brought back as well. And remember, she was the one, when she was brought back, her own mother didn't really even recognize her. They didn't recognize each other, but when the mom started singing the hymn that she'd sung to her when she was little, the captive girl, who's older now, recognized her mom's voice in the song, and then they knew who each other was. The Mary Jemison story is different. She is a captive that never returned back to her original society, if you could call it that. She stayed with the Indians her whole life. I know that plaque mentioned that she returned to her Christian faith at the end of her life, but she never returned to what we would call, you know, white European society. She always stayed with the Indians, and her main reason was because of her children. She had 2 husbands with the Indians. One was a Delaware, one was a Seneca or Shawnee, I think it was a Seneca Indian, and she had a total of, I think it said 8 children with him. So that's why she stayed. One main reason she stayed with the Native Americans was because her family. She had children and stuff, so she stayed with them. Even when she perhaps had the opportunity to leave, she chose to stay with them. So her story is going to be a little different than the others, but it has a lot of similar notes as well. So let me set the camera down. Like I said, we'll have a little story time. I'll read a little bit from this book from her own perspective. Alright, so like I said, I'll read a little bit about her in this book. Got my reading glasses on. We might have a little interference from some noise up by the church. It looks like they're doing some bit of construction up there. So as usual in my videos, there's always going to be some disturbance that I wasn't planning for. But let's read a little bit from the book, her story. So in the spring of 1755, Mary and her family were living in Adams County, where we are right now, and were attacked before breakfast by Indians. The first inkling the family had of the impending attack was the sound of gunshots. When they opened the door, they could see the bodies of their neighbor and his horse were lying on the ground. The Indians had secured her father and pushed their way into the house, quickly taking the occupants inside captive. After plundering the house, Mary, her father, her mother, her brothers, Robert and Matthew, her sister Betsy, and a woman and 3 children who were staying with them at that time were hurried away into the woods. 2 other brothers who had been hiding in the barn escaped. So the raiding party consists of 6 Shawnee Indians and 4 Frenchmen. Mary described an Indian going behind them with a whip, frequently using it on the children to make them keep pace. The first night there was no water or food for them, and they slept on the ground unprotected from the elements. So the next part gets a little more brutal, because I try to keep these videos PG-13. Yes, this part's kind of sad too. So the next day, the captives were given a breakfast made from the provisions that had been taken from her parents' home. Moving on, the group stopped sometimes towards evening near a swamp. There, one of the Indians took off Mary's stockings and shoes and put moccasins on her feet. They did the same with one young boy who was the son of the woman who had been staying in the Jemison's home. And this is where it gets kind of sad. Mary's mom, seeing what was happening, was said to have spoken these words to her daughter. Okay, so at this point, the mom understood what was about to happen. So sadly, what Mary's mom understood to be happening was that since Mary and this other young boy were being given moccasins and other things, they were the ones that were going to be kept. They're the ones that were going to be taken captive and adopted into Indian society. And as for the rest of them, not so much. You know, they're probably going to be, she realized that at this point she was going to be separated from her daughter, you know, permanently, in death actually. And that is indeed what happened to the other captives. So I'm not necessarily going to read to you everything her mother supposedly said to her daughter. I'm sure there's some things that she told her daughter. I doubt her daughter remembered everything word for word here. It's probably embellished a little bit. I'll read a little bit of it. It says, "My dear little Mary, I fear that the time has arrived when we must be parted forever. Your life, my child, I think will be spared, but we shall probably be tomahawked here in this lonesome place by the Indians." So her mom knew what was going to happen. And she ends, "May God bless you, my child, and make you comfortable and happy." Yeah. So, yeah, in fact, the Indians killed and scalped the next morning, this is what Mary noticed, the Indians killed and scalped everyone they had taken captive, with the exception of Mary and the little boy. The next morning, Mary, seeing what had occurred, described the bodies of her fellow captives as horribly mangled. She and the boy were then moved by the Indians, leaving the bodies where they lay. And then later that night she observes them, cleaning the scalps that they had taken and recognizing her parents because of the color of their hair and stuff. Yeah, because her mother's hair was red. Yeah. And she bore what she witnessed without saying a word. This was only the beginning of what she would withstand on her journey of adoption, assimilation, and washing out the white. After a period of time, Mary Jemison was adopted by Seneca Indians. Eventually she was married twice, first to a Delaware Indian who later died, and then a Seneca Indian. She never returned to the white community, saying that she didn't want to leave her children. So that is a basic summary of Mary's story. Like I said, it might vary bit to bit depending on which version of the story you read. There are several different accounts online about her life, written by different people. I think she was, like I said, she was interviewed once, I mentioned, but I think someone else interviewed her too. And of course, stories tend to get embellished. And story writers kind of add to the story sometimes, or have differences. It's no different today. So you might find slightly varying renditions of her story, but it's all basically the same. Yeah, so she then, after she was kidnapped stuff, they moved up more towards the New York area. That's where she's buried. There's another statue of her up in Letchworth State Park. Might have to go check that out sometime. Yeah, but the story of Mary Jemison, kind of an interesting story. And there is still more to her story as well. She did retain her English, because I think during the Revolutionary War she was able to act as an interpreter during some of the treaties. I think there was one treaty called the Treaty of Big Tree, I think it was called, where she actually enabled better treatment of the Indians in the treaty because she understood English. She can talk with the folks that were, the other side that was trying to make the treaty. They weren't always trying to be as fair as possible to the Indians, because a lot of times they couldn't understand the English or the terms of the treaty, but she could. So that's kind of interesting. But it also says that she retained, her parents were Irish, Scots-Irish. It says that she retained her Irish accent throughout her life. So that's kind of interesting too. So, and she was 12 years old when she was first taken captive. I don't know if I mentioned that. So she wasn't as young as some in the shadows there. Some of the younger ones that were taken captive around 6 or so tended to lose their ability to speak English and stuff. They forgot a lot of it, but she was 12, so she was a little bit older at the time of her captivity. And as mentioned, she was married twice, one to a Delaware Indian and later to a Seneca. I think with the Delaware she had 1 or 2 children, and with the other one she had at least 6, I believe. And in her account, or anybody else's, there's no indication that she was treated badly or disrespectfully in those marriages. I know they moved around a lot, but I know she had some trouble with the kids. I think one brother killed several of the other brothers at one point, so there was some family strife. But it is an intriguing story. Like, this is our first Indian captive story where the captive stayed with the Indians her whole life then. The others were returned. So it's a different perspective. Like I said, if you want to learn more about her, there's plenty of information about her online. Like I said, you might find some varying different facts depending on which version of the story you read. But the basic summary of the story is the same. As I mentioned, she's also known as the White Woman of the Genesee, because that's in upstate Pennsylvania up into New York, where she spent most of her life then. That's why she's called that. Let's take one more look at her statue before we head out. And here she is once again. This looks like it depicts her in her younger years. I think the one up at Letchworth State Park in New York is made more in a likeness of her in her older years. This is what she would look like more as a younger girl, I believe. It's a nice little statue though. Mary Jemison. But I think that'll be it for me at this location. Because as I said, if you're intrigued by this video and this story, you can read more about her online. But I covered the gist of it. So yeah. Story of Mary Jemison. Alright, I got a few other places I'm going to visit today. Actually, it's August now. Today's August 2nd. So I think we're going to head to Caledonia State Park next, just down the road. As always, thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching another episode in our French and Indian War series, and we'll see you on the next one.